Thank you so much, first and foremost, for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar on getting started with security operations. I have put this Connect Accelerate slide up just because I want you all to be aware that we have our annual Risk and Security User Symposium coming up in October, and that is for our ServiceNow risk and security operations customers. It's at our headquarters in Santa Clara. So go ahead and scan that QR code if you want to learn more and access the registration page. And I'm just shooting that in the chat as well so that you can take a look at that.
And it's free.
Oh, great point. Thanks, Tim. It is
It's free.
free. It is free. I always forget to mention that. Great perk of the event is that it is free to attend. So you just have to get there and stay in Santa Clara, or if you're local, even better. So we'd love to have you join us. Um, so moving on, this is our Live on ServiceNow Getting Started webinar, really targeted at our newer customers or customers who want a refresher of security operations and where to start with their implementation. But really, it's all about you. So if you have questions, we would encourage you to use the Q&A and use the chat because we really want to be here to support you in your journey. This presentation goes through a number of different key resources that we've curated for you. We will be sharing all of that as well in the community, and the recording will also be posted. And I'll just throw that in the chat. This is exactly where it will be and where you'll be able to find all of the links that we're going through in today's session. You heard Tim's voice. Tim is on, Tim Boswell from Outbound Security Operations, Product Management. I am also from that team, and we are going to be guiding you through the webinar today. And we usually cycle through different people in the teams that support the webinar. So through product success, through product management, expert services. So we just wanted to say welcome, and we'll go forward here. We're not planning to cover roadmap or forward-looking statements, but if we do cover anything like that or brand new features, our standard safe harbor notice does apply to the presentation. So just not to make any purchasing decisions based on those forward-looking statements. And now just a little bit more housekeeping. I mentioned it that we really want to answer your questions and be here to support you in your implementation journey, wherever that might be. So take a look at the Zoom controls at the bottom of your screen. You'll be able to see a Q&A function. If it's not there or you're not able to use that, you can always use the chat and send us a direct message there or a message to everyone, and we'll answer it either live at the end or throughout the session today. We are recording this webinar as well, so we'll post that, as I mentioned, at the link in the community that I shared in the chat. And then the last thing here is when we do close out the session, you'll get a quick survey on your screen that we'd love for you to complete and give us your feedback. We are always looking at that, always looking for topics for future webinars. We have office hours as well, which is an open forum to come and ask questions, share best practices. So any kind of topics that people want to dive into more, you can share that in the survey, and we'll put it on our radar for the next session. In terms of our agenda, we're going to cover three main sections. So we'll do an overview of security operations as a refresher for people and what resources can help you get more familiar with that. Then we'll dive into your implementation journey a little bit more. And lastly, we'll finish off with some of the why. Why should you implement? What kind of value can you achieve with SecOps? And finish off with some resources and Q&A. So getting started with our first section, the first thing we'll do is we'll launch a quick poll because we're interested to see what you're planning to implement. If you're not, that's fine too. You can share something in the chat. Maybe you're just listening in. That's fine as well. But we obviously have security incident response, we have vulnerability response, many other applications as well. But those are the two core ones that we're looking at. So you might be looking at one of those, both of those. Maybe you're not sure yet. Maybe it's something else with respect to security operations. So let us know in the chat. And it's great to see people responding here. So thank you. It looks like a lot of people are doing both, which is pretty common looking at both applications. Some just on security incident response or VR side. Just keep it open for a few more seconds to see if anyone else would like to respond there. All right. I'm going to go ahead and wrap that up. So, as I mentioned, some interest there across the board. Really great to see. So, thanks for sharing that. All right, moving right along. So, high level overview of what security operations is as a portfolio. So, we have a number of different solutions, and some of you may be quite familiar with them, but essentially they're fitting into kind of two broad areas. And in this diagram here, you'll see one on the left, which is really your unified attack surface management, or you can kind of group that into things like responding to vulnerabilities. So, we have the ability to respond to vulnerabilities across the attack surface. So this is your host and infrastructure vulnerabilities, as well as application, cloud and container, your misconfigurations, um, operational technology vulnerabilities. And then we also have security posture control. So that's looking at your sort of asset security hygiene across the enterprise. Um, we have recently also released our Now Assist for vulnerability response in the May release, and this includes some of our security agents, which is really exciting. So, vulnerability exposure assessment agent being one of them. We'll share some links so that you can learn more about that, but really, really exciting times for SecOps. On the right-hand side, where it says respond to incidents, this is really that other side of the portfolio, which is all about enterprise security case management. And so this is largely done through security incident response, our SOAR solution. But then within that, we have a lot of purpose-built applications for things such as your major security incidents with a major security incident management, your data leakage type incidents with data loss prevention incident response. Last year, we released Threat Intelligence Security Center, which is our threat intel or platform, so TIP. And then we also have our Now Assist capabilities in that side of the portfolio. So they were released last year. We now have agents as well on the security incident response side. So one of them being an incident resolver agent. So we'll again share some links to check that out. But lots of great innovation, lots of new stuff in security operations. That kind of reminds me, we have a What's New webinar coming up on Wednesday. So you can register for that in the community, where we'll be going in a little bit more detail of what came out in the May release. And then high level to look at some of the workflow perspective on either side of the portfolio with security incident response. Really, essentially, it starts with hooking up your data sources. So getting those integrations to bring data into the platform so that you can start to workflow that data and leverage some of that out of the box automation right off the bat. So really you're going to be able to have that central system of action to view, to prioritize all of the events and alerts that are coming in. You're having that, if your CMDB is in ServiceNow, you're having that native connection there, which is going to allow you to understand the business context and really enrich your security incidents and your response. And then we have integrations with different threat intelligence tools and orchestration tools so that you can actually create different actions and enrich your incidents within ServiceNow, and then action them right from the SIR workspace. We also have a number of out-of-the-box playbooks so that you can do this in a really automated fashion, and then post-incident workflows like different configurable reports and things like that, along with, of course, analytics that you can set up. And just to give us a little bit of a flavor as well of what that looks like for those of you less familiar. So this is the SIR workspace. You're seeing a little flavor of Now Assist in here, which is our generative AI capabilities in terms of incident summarization there and recommended actions. But essentially just giving you a flavor of where security analysts would be working out of on the SIR side of the house. We'll move on to vulnerability response with another high level view of that kind of workflow approach. Again, in security, we really rely on those integrations to bring data into the platform. So it typically starts again with integrating your different scanners to start to bring vulnerabilities into the platform and set up all that automation right out of the gate, which will get you a lot of value right away. Grouping vulnerabilities, assigning them to the right teams across security and IT. Tim will touch a little bit more on that in the implementation section. But again, we have a number of integrations in the store for solution recommendations and patch orchestration, and then workflows for requesting exceptions and reassignments and deferrals and things like that, along with again that native connection with your CMDB, with integrated risk management if you're using our GRC solutions. And so that's sort of the high level look on the vulnerability response side of the house. And again, just giving a quick flavor of what that looks like in our vulnerability manager workspace here. This is really where analysts are workflowing those vulnerabilities, and managers are really looking to see, okay, what are the watch topics or areas that I'm interested in tracking our progress in terms of how we're doing on remediation, and then getting all of these visuals and being able to drill into the actual vulnerabilities themselves and things like reporting. All right, so that's our little high level overview. We'll look at some specific resources here that are going to allow you to dive a bit deeper. When it comes to sort of the most critical kind of technical and resource, that would be product documentation. It's always up to date. Uh, we have Yokohama shown here, so the next release will be in a few months there, but essentially this is where you're going to go for all of your release notes, all of your setup documentation, all of the information on the latest and greatest will be there in product documentation. So really, really critical resource. And again, if you want to access any of the links that we're going through today, I'm just going to post again where those will be in the community. We have a ton of different demo and video resources in various places. A lot of them are in our YouTube playlists. So for security operations community and for live on ServiceNow, there's some great playlists in there that have good videos in terms of demos and some implementation resources as well. So definitely check those out. Some analysis demos up there as well. Again, showcasing our latest generative AI functionality in security operations. So that's where you would go to find that. The third thing here is ServiceNow University, really, really great resource. This was formerly named Now Learning. So it's now ServiceNow University. There's a ton of free online courses that you can do. We have SIR implementation courses, VR implementation courses. There's a post that I have put in the community that really goes through all of our recommended training for security operations. So I've linked that as well. And definitely check that out. It's a great place to go again for that on demand online courses, or you can also register for instructor led training. And check it out in terms of your learning credits with your company. Some people aren't aware, but when you do buy ServiceNow, you tend to have some learning credits involved. So if you wanted to do instructor training, that's what you would use to access that. Fourth here is security operations community. I really love the community. It's a go-to place for users of SecOps from around the world, whether it's customers, whether it's partners. We also have our own internal teams going there, product management, regularly posting articles and resources. You'll see this new resource library. It was launched at the end of last year. This is where we're really trying to curate all of the resources that are out there and kind of organize them by product area and topic area so that it's really easy for you to go and see what you need and where to find it. So that's the resource library. We also have a listing of events that are related to security operations that we keep updating regularly. So you can go to the community page to find both of those. And then, of course, there's a forum where you can post questions and find solutions and get expert advice from users all over the world. A really, really great resource, and you can subscribe there so that you don't miss anything as well. This event obviously is posted there under events, and so are many others. So check it out. And lastly, here is our ServiceNow developer site. So this is really our developer ecosystem, which is a great resource for your more technical team members, but also is open to all levels of individuals. It has a lot of different technical documentation, API guides and things like that. And this is also where your team can sign up for the free developer program, and they can chat with other developers and get access to personal developer sandbox instances to be able to download different applications and experiment with the Now platform. So this is definitely something to check out and take a look at. All right, we're going to be moving into the next section, which is focusing a little bit more on the implementation side of things. So I am going to pass it over to Tim, but I will start off with our little poll to get a sense of where people are at in their implementation journey. So here we are, a few options. Maybe you're implementing now or this quarter, maybe you're planning to later this year, or maybe you don't have plans yet. And hopefully the webinar will give you some resources and information to help you plan that out. And then maybe it's something else. So let us know in the chat. We're really curious to see where people are at.
Seeing a good mix.
Yeah, nice. Good mix here. Exactly.
Yeah.
Curious what those others are thinking. Okay, implemented but stabilizing. Yep.
Stabilizing, yes, or
Mm-hmm.
optimizing, or
Right.
still configuring all those features. The
Yep.
the more the that's something that we hear from customers a lot is, okay, we have it installed and we're using the baseline, but we're ready to move on to the advanced features. And we want to make sure that we're maximizing our investment because there are a lot of features to get you started, but there's also a lot more of those advanced and more mature features and functions. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, I'll stop that poll.
Thank you.
Share that out. Great.
Okay.
So move right along here.
Yeah, so I could take it from here, kind of mix things up a little bit. Switch gears. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take about 15 minutes or so and just talk about your implementation journey. And I'm going to talk more about considerations and decisions and what it looks like at a high level. If anybody's on here thinking, hey, this is a great webinar, I'm going to learn how to implement SecOps, I'm sorry, but that's not what this webinar is. There is actually an instructor-led course, security operations implementation and security incident response implementation, which also covers DLP and threat intelligence and vulnerability response implementation. Those are instructor-led courses that we also require our partners to successfully complete. And so if you're here because you're looking to understand how to actually lay hands on keyboard and install the application, stick around because we have some information for you here. But this is not what we're going to be talking about today. That is an actual instructor-led implementation course. Um, that I just want to set expectations and make sure that everybody understands that. So, as far as implementation options go, if you're a customer and you've recently purchased and acquired security operations, or you've had it and you're looking to maybe revamp it, maybe you've customized it a little bit too much, and you want to get closer to out of the box, and you're thinking, okay, what's the best way to do that? We do have expert services within ServiceNow These are experts who work directly with you, and they will also help with the project management of it. They're not just simply implementation engineers. There are some business process consultants. There are some project management consultants. So they will work with you and make sure that you have a successful implementation and that you're on your way. ServiceNow has a vast ecosystem of implementation partners. And these implementation partners do the same thing as expert services. The upside to the implementation partners are that they work with a lot of customers. And chances are, whatever problem you're trying to solve, they've already seen it, or they've already solved that problem, or they're working on it now. We also have a lot of implementation partners who also build integrations and work with ServiceNow to build integrations, and those integrations are on the ServiceNow store. So implementation partners are a great resource. They kind of they can also take things a little bit further than expert services in that they offer a lot of day two support. A lot of customers will have a relationship with an implementation partner even after the implementation, that maybe every few months or every couple of quarters, they'll bring that implementation partner back in, maybe to do like a health check or help the customer, that is, to implement and turn on certain features that maybe you're ready for. And so implementation part, I just can't stress enough that that's something that you should really be considering, even if you're already implementing, or if you're already using ServiceNow Expert Services. By all means, you should absolutely consider an implementation partner and have a relationship with them. There's also a co-delivery model down there at the bottom underneath the two of those. Oftentimes, there will be a project that is a little bit more complex or a little bit large, and so expert services and an implementation partner will sometimes team up and work on that implementation together. And that's more on a as needed basis. You can absolutely self-implement. That is definitely an option for you. The downside to that though is you may not have the breadth of experience or the depth of experience that an implementation partner or ServiceNow Expert Services might have. Again, the nice thing about the services and partners is that they're out there every day working with customers, solving problems. And so if you're trying to solve a problem, you may not immediately know um, the best way to do that, or you may not know what went wrong at another customer in doing that. So, even if you are self-implementing, which is totally an option, and we do have tech support, and we do have some great resources that showed you earlier. Um, Again, there are some downsides to that. So just even if you are self-implementing, just you may just want to keep in mind, well, maybe I should at least have a conversation with them, implementation partner, and see if maybe they know something I don't. So enough about options. Let's move on and kind of give you an idea and set some expectations on what an implementation journey would look like. If we think about vulnerability response, most customers who are just starting out with ServiceNow security operations, where they're over there at zero on the far left. Manual operations, meaning they're exporting the information out of their vulnerability scanner and they're throwing it over the fence at IT and saying, okay, go patch these systems. I'm generalizing, of course, and I'm exaggerating. But I will tell you, a couple weeks ago at our knowledge conference, I did meet with the customer and they made a comment like, "Oh, we get this screenshot from our vulnerability scanner, and I don't know what to do with it. We're thinking maybe vulnerability response can help with that." And so there are a lot of customers that are out there at manual operations. They're at level zero, um, and that's where many customers start. And they say, "Wow, I have too many vulnerabilities. I just can't get out from under it." So when they install vulnerability response, that level one, that right there, that they get to that level almost immediately because now we're importing and ingesting those vulnerabilities from the vulnerability scanner, and it's in ServiceNow, which is the same place where the asset information is, where the SIEMDB is, where the asset owners are, where the other vulnerability information is, like vulnerability intelligence. Maybe we're consuming um, other vulnerability data or CVE data from other third parties, or maybe we're getting that vulnerability data from the European version of MITRE, and we want to match that together. So right there, that single system of record, that's what ServiceNow is doing for us. And it's improving the visibility because now we can better track and manage who are those vulnerabilities assigned to, who's working on them. And the alignment with the CMDB, the other thing that we can do when we start using vulnerability response is we can allow that vulnerability scanner to be another source into the CMDB. So that's another quick win that we can achieve right there is a multi-source CMDB. And a lot of customers see value in that today. And so as customers move on and they start implementing and turning on certain features, the next things that most customers will turn on are those assignment rules and the prioritization and those various risk calculators. So that way they can leverage the automation that's in ServiceNow to streamline their response and their management of vulnerabilities. And then the other thing that we've recently added that we just released a couple weeks ago is agentic AI within vulnerability response, and we will be adding more. And so we're taking it beyond just using automation in ServiceNow. Now we're leveraging both generative AI as well as agentic AI to help streamline management of those vulnerabilities. So the next thing is security incident response. Very similar. Most customers, they're starting out, they're working out of their EDR tool, or maybe they're working out of their SIM tool, but there's still a lot of screen switching going on. There's still a lot of, okay, I need to go over here and look in the SIMDB and figure out what's this asset that's being attacked, or who owns that. I need to go over this other tool to do a threat lookup and things like that. And so, very similar to vulnerability response. As soon as you implement security incident response and start implementing those security tools into ServiceNow, and ServiceNow starts ingesting those alerts and those offenses and those events and things, very similar to VR, we can get some very quick wins. So right there in that number one column, unified visibility. Now we can start doing case management. Now we can start having that workspace to do that incident response and to bring in that enrichment data and to eliminate that screen switching and eliminate that swivel chairing. And ServiceNow is a great integration platform. And so eventually what you can do is ServiceNow can be the aggregator of all of your security tools, or it can be that single pane of glass. It can be that one place where all of your events and alerts come in. So you don't have to go to a bunch of different tools. You don't have to pull that IP address out of your SIM tool and then go over to your or your threat intelligence tool like VirusTotal or Recorded Future or CrowdStrike or something like that, and then upload it and then swivel chair over to Office 365 to figure out, okay, who else received this IP address in an email and where is all that? So using those integrations that ServiceNow provides, that gives you a quick win by giving you that unified visibility. And then moving on, customers, again, very similar to VR, will start to turn on some of those more advanced features and functionality, start turning on like the automated incident enrichment, pulling in that threat intelligence, pulling in that other data enrichment. So pulling in all of that asset information, so we're working on that incident. We don't have to go over to the CMDB to look up the asset. ServiceNow is going to bring that in to that security case, so we have it already there for us. It's loaded there, so the analyst doesn't have to go looking for it. Bringing in other threat intel, bringing in maybe those MITRE ATT&CK TTPs, so we can start taking our incident response team and maturing that as well. So we're not just maturing our implementation of ServiceNow, we're also maturing our operations within that security operations center. And then as customers move on and they get more and more comfortable with using security incident response, then they really go to those more mature level things over there on the far right, the orchestrated response, doing things like predictive intelligence and adding automated responses and automating their process flows and their playbooks and doing things like major security incident management. So when they have a major security incident, they can use ServiceNow as that virtual command center. Doing things like intent-based incident response because we're matching up those incidents with those tactics, techniques, and procedures in MITRE ATT&CK. And then adding on other modules like either DLP or threat intelligence, security center that allows us to do threat intelligence case management. And again, we've also added AI capabilities to security incident response, whether it's generative AI, it's generating things like an incident summary or a post-incident report, or our agentic AI, where it's actually taking action and doing things like helping that analyst close out that incident or respond faster to that false positive. So that way they can move on to those true positives and move on to those incidents that are much more important and much more meaningful. So let's take a look now at some things to consider, some implementation themes. Um, the things that you want to consider, whether you're standing this up for the first time, you've recently acquired vulnerability response, and you're thinking like, okay, how do I go about this? Or if you've already had this and you've customized a little bit too much and you want to get back to basics and start getting closer out of the box. The first thing that you need to consider is how are you going to bring in that vulnerability data into ServiceNow? What are the vulnerability scanners you're using? What are the other vulnerability intelligence tools that you're using? Are you using a tool like Shodan or Recorded Future to bring in exploit data, things like that? Where are you getting your vulnerability information from? Is it coming from the National Vulnerability Database? Is it coming from somewhere else? And so you need to identify where you're going to be bringing that in. And then you want to understand, okay, how are we going to remediate these vulnerabilities? What is our process flow for remediating vulnerabilities? And how do we get that back into ServiceNow? And how do we use ServiceNow to streamline that and automate that? And then also think about things like, okay, what kind of reporting am I going to need to do? What kind of metrics am I going to need to do around vulnerability management? How do I want to set those up within ServiceNow? Do I want to use the out-of-the-box reports and out-of-the-box dashboards that ServiceNow provides? Maybe start with those, and then after I've been using it for a while, maybe I'll go in, maybe modify those or create my own, and then plan out how are you going to actually implement that and then go live. What kind of testing are you going to do with your users? Um, how are you going to ensure that the vulnerabilities that are coming in from your vulnerability scanner that you're not going to overwhelm. So one of the things that I see a lot of customers do is they start out with a small batch of vulnerabilities to start with. They don't just flip a switch and have all the vulnerabilities come into ServiceNow. They start with a small batch. Maybe they start with their critical vulnerabilities or their highest priority vulnerabilities, start with those, and then they work their way up and eventually getting to the point where all vulnerabilities are consumed in ServiceNow. Some more considerations when we talk about some of the components that you need to think about. I'm not going to read through all of this, but again, what are those tools that you want to integrate into ServiceNow? How do you want to handle when that vulnerability scanner sends asset information to ServiceNow, but that configuration item does not exist in the CMDB? How do you want ServiceNow to handle that? Do you want that to just be populated in our discovered items table? And then you as maybe as the security manager, work with IT and your CMDB team to reconcile that. What's the process there? Because that is most likely to happen. It's highly likely that your vulnerability scanner is going to identify some assets that are not in your CMDB. And so you want to consider and think about like, okay, how do I want to handle that? How am I going to prioritize vulnerabilities beyond the severity that I get from the National Vulnerability Database or the severity that I get from my vulnerability scanning vendor? What are the things that I want to set up in my risk calculator? So things to consider there with regards to some of the components. Thinking about, how is that data going to flow into ServiceNow? How are you going to work on it? How are you going to assign it? And things like that. And then the next one, I think. The core, yeah, the non-core plumbing. Thank you. The other things that you want to do as well, moving into like day two of using vulnerability response, um, what kind of SLAs or SLOs do you want to set up with regards to these vulnerabilities within ServiceNow? How do you want to track that? Um, what kind of approvals do you need to have within ServiceNow? For example, like let's say there's a vulnerability on a system, and maybe you work at a healthcare agency or something like that, or at a hospital, and the owner of that system says, "Well, we're doing research." And we can't reboot that system because if we do, we're going to lose all of our research, or we can't patch it because it's going to cause us to fall out of compliance with FDA. So we need some kind of exception or deferral on that vulnerability. What's the path that you want to take with that? ServiceNow has a great workflow on handling that, and it can require people to approve those exceptions and send out notifications. And so those are things you want to think of is how do we want ServiceNow to handle that workflow for us? Things like that. And then again, the reporting, the metrics, the dashboards. How do you want to do that? Maybe from the start, and then think about like, oh, this could be an opportunity if you don't already have a metrics program. Then maybe you could do something like that. And then I'm just spend a couple more minutes talking about security incident response and the considerations and what to expect there. Um, Again, the implementation themes, the user personas. This is kind of important to consider at the beginning because security incident response has a lot of different roles and a lot of different access control. One of the reasons why security incident response was created in the first place was because it needed to be scoped and cordoned off from the rest of ServiceNow. So access to security incident response can be controlled, and it can be controlled at a very granular level. And then access within security incident response can be controlled at a very granular level as well. You might decide, well, I want my tier one analyst to only see tier one incidents. I don't want them to be able to see tier two or tier three incidents. Or maybe you say, well, I want HR to have access to these incidents, but I only want them to see certain fields. I don't want them to see every field that's in the incident or something like that. So those are things that you need to consider. And then you also need to consider um, is the ServiceNow platform team going to delegate administration of security incident response to maybe a security engineering team or somebody on that security team? One of the things that you can do is you can also control admin level access into security incident response. Some customers have said, we want to limit the liability of our IT organization. We don't want our ServiceNow admin to accidentally stumble across an insider threat incident or a employee investigation or something like that. And then a lot of this is very similar to vulnerability response. You're going to need to think about like what is our current process flow as far as how we are alerted to an incident and how we respond to an incident. What are some of the things that we need to integrate with ServiceNow? What are all those tools? What do we do on the other end of that? That SOAR component, the orchestration and the automation and the response of that security incident. How are we going to handle that? And then let me just, Sarah, I'll just go through these last couple of slides very briefly. Several of the components, things that you want to consider. Again, like how do you want that information to come into ServiceNow? Which tools do you want to start with first? Very similar to vulnerabilities. You don't want to flip a switch and have everything come into ServiceNow all at once. You want to decide which tools should come into ServiceNow first. Maybe start with like your SIM if that's the tool that you're using the most. And then determining which playbooks, which flows do you want to start with. If you plan to automate how you respond to incidents, you need to consider like how do you want to start with that? Do you want to start with some easy ones just so that way you get used to you doing it in ServiceNow? Or do you want to start with those incidents that take up the most amount of your time? Like let's say phishing is 50% of your incidents. Maybe that's where you want to start. And the next slide, please. Go through these very briefly. Um, Again, the various components, other things that you're going to pull into ServiceNow. that feedback loop, some key questions and data points agreed to for closing out those security incidents. You need to decide like, okay, we believe we resolved the security incident. What do we want to do to close that out? And that's something that ServiceNow is really good at, because if you just say, well, I just want a post incident report, or I just want some kind of closure report, or maybe you need some elaborate after action report written up or something like that, because these incidents are going to go to litigation and they need to get turned over to law enforcement. But you can also decide which incidents require a brief write-up and which incidents require a lengthy write-up. So that's something you can do within ServiceNow, and the automation in ServiceNow can trigger that as well. And I think I have one more slide and then I'll turn it over. Um, yeah, so and then we get into some of the more advanced or mature components like threat intelligence, the orchestration. So maybe you want ServiceNow to automate some of those orchestration activities. Maybe you decide like, okay, if there's a laptop that resides in our finance department and it gets this alert, I just want it isolated. I don't want to take any chances. And so through our integrations that ServiceNow has with EDR tools and other tools, maybe you say, you know what, when that alert comes in, I just want ServiceNow to trigger my EDR tool to isolate that laptop. I don't want to take any chances. I don't want to wait for an analyst to acknowledge the alert and start working on it. I just want that to happen. So maybe those are things that you start thinking about. And then also things like email forwarding rules, sending out reports, sending out notifications, and things like that. So, Sarah, I apologize. I went over a little bit. I
That's
ate
all
into
good.
the last portion by a few minutes, but there's just so much to talk about. There's so
Yeah.
much that ServiceNow can do. It's hard to keep it to 15 or 20 minutes.
I agree. I agree. But you've brought us to the resources, which we'll go through just really quickly here. Probably the number one takeaway if you're looking to implement, Tim talked about the different implementation options, but the Partner Finder is a really great resource online here that you'll be able to search for an implementation partner, filter by their skills and expertise and how many deployments they've done, CSAT, things like that, and look at different partner profiles, which is really, really key when you're selecting a partner. So we do recommend not only getting a skilled partner, but also skilled individuals on your actual implementation. So check that out if you are looking for a partner. Highly recommended. Uh, as Tim mentioned, we also have our own expert services team. So if you want to connect, get some resources from our expert services, that's possible as well. There's that co-delivery option for you, and different types of packaged services that you can access through ServiceNow. And then the last one here is Now Create. So I do believe there'll be some changes coming to the website in the coming months, but for now, you can go there to access some really great implementation resources around success packs and scoping guides and different recommended implementation sequences, workshop presentations. So check it out. The links are also in the post that I shared. And now we'll get into our final small section here, just on achieving value and why you should really get started with your implementation. I'm going to throw up a poll here. Just a minute. All right, so just looking at what are your top desired business outcomes here. So is it related to security incidents and accelerating your response there, or maybe to the vulnerability side? Reducing effort, reducing attack surface. If it's all of the above, that's great too. Or something else that's not on here. Obviously, these are just some of the top ones, but feel free to share in the chat. And I'll keep that open for just a couple more seconds to get people's responses here. All right. I see in the chat, force consistent process across our frontline units. Nice. So getting that process really figure it out across the organization. Awesome. I'll end that out. Thanks to everyone there for sharing. Um, so yeah, I mean, the great news here is that this is exactly what our platform is designed to help you achieve, right? So we have many customers that are live with security operations, like some of yourselves, that are achieving these types of outcomes as well. And we really feel that when you're going into an implementation, whether you've already implemented and you're re-implementing or you're implementing a new application or module, it's really great to start out with those kind of end goals and end outcomes in terms of mapping what you're going to be implementing, right? What are you looking to achieve at the end of the day? And these are going to give you a few different ideas based on what customers that are live have actually achieved here. So one of the key things I do like to point out with this slide is just that the speed at which you can get to value, right? So within 6 months of going live, a lot of customers have achieved these results. And certainly by 12 months of use, they've achieved a lot of efficiency and outcomes that are positive with both security incident response and vulnerability response. So I won't go through them all here, but really great 2 times the number of security incidents closed on average, for example, cutting remediation time of a vulnerability in half. So really, really good stuff that you can sort of think about as your end goal and work backwards from there. And then our solutions were born out of an internal need, and Tim knows all about that because he was working in our stock at the time. But I like to throw up these slides just to show that ServiceNow, our security team here is customer zero. And so they continue to adopt our latest innovations and provide feedback to really help shape the product and success for our customers. And so internally, our teams have also gone through that journey of moving from more manual and labor intense processes to respond both to vulnerabilities and security incidents and continue to achieve results. So these are just some of them on the VR side. And then looking at security incident response. Again, really great cost savings when it comes to automation that's been adopted, hours saved, automation basically benefiting from the automation that's built into the platform. And then more recently, we can layer on Now Assist, right? Our generative AI capabilities, which are just further accelerating those outcomes. Not reflected here yet, but definitely great outcomes from the start of that implementation. So looking at measuring success here, really, again, how do you get to those results? So setting your vision and outcomes for the implementation is a really key first step that shouldn't be overlooked. So these are just some more examples to give you some ideas of what those might look like. And I would say a lot of customers will select just a couple to start that will relate to really what their key challenges are that they're trying to prioritize for their specific implementation or phase of implementation. And then from there, selecting some of those success metrics that map to those outcomes that you're going to be able to track and measure progress. And then here are just some suggested improvements in terms of what you might achieve in those areas. And there is, again, I've linked in the post that was shared in the chat where you can find this article if you want to read a little bit more on mapping those outcomes and metrics. And then a few resources here that you can take a look at if you want to learn more. We have some really great customer stories on our website that you can filter by security operations to be able to find out, who's using security operations and what have they achieved. So always like sharing that and turning people over to that site there. And then ServiceNow Impact is something that you may have access to. So this is our value acceleration resource. It's a really great place for you to get access to specific resources that you may or may not have. So check with your account team to just see if you have impact. But really, there's a lot of tools there to give you specialized support and access to ServiceNow experts. We talked about ServiceNow University earlier, so there will be additional learning available with ServiceNow Impact. And then this is a bit of a summary for you if you wanted to quickly scan the QR codes for any of these additional resources. Again, they're all going to be shared afterwards, but just wanted to flash that up for you as well before we move on. Okay. Another summary, we've got so many resources. So, another quick summary slide again. These slides will be posted in that community post, so you'll be able to access all of these links. But I did share in the chat our resource library and events post in community, which I think are really, really great to have on hand. But I'm going to share these as well in that post when we share the slides. Flashing up the Connect Accelerate link again if you want to check it out or register. Again, it's happening in October in Santa Clara, and it is free to register for customers of risk or security operations. So check that out. Just sharing the link quickly there. Perfect. Okay. Future webinars. So I mentioned we have a What's New webinar on Wednesday. The following week, I believe there's a VR roadmap webinar, and there is a office hours, which is that open forum for you guys to ask questions. So you can check it out on the community in our events section and register. We'd love to see you at future events. Thanks so much, everyone.